your message good, how you make your message the right message, and who you work with, and standing behind that message. So, with that, and without talking a whole lot more myself, I'd like to introduce Venessa to the class and give you an opportunity in case I screwed anything up in your background or your bio to correct it now.
No, hey, thanks for having me. And no, you did a really good job. I spent 11 years in wealth management directly after graduating from college. I graduated in communications and I became fully registered in every which direction. I was registered as a branch manager at one point because I just wanted to keep building, but eventually decided to jump into the social media world and really follow my passions. So that's what I've been doing ever since.
And in this question, my first question to kind of kick this off goes back to your times at Morgan Stanley and also your work today. And the teams are very different, but about teams, when you are doing your job, be it we the class or anything else, how important is it to have a good team you work with and you trust?
I mean, it could be everything. One of my absolute favorite go-to quotes, something that guides me often, is a Steve Jobs quote. And he said something like, "You don't hire smart people to tell them what to do. You hire smart people for them to tell you what to do." So for me, it's about finding people who are experts in what they do so I don't have to do their job. I don't have to micromanage. I don't have to tell them, and that is everything. Then you accomplish so much more when you're not doing everyone's job.
Yeah, no, and that's a huge benefit if you have that trust in people. And looking back, have there been times where you've picked the wrong person for your team, and how do you deal with it? I mean, some people are afraid to cut bait. Are you someone who realizes once it's not a good fit, you've got to walk away?
That took experience, because I think in the beginning it's really hard. You become almost emotionally connected, and it is tough. But over time, I've learned that a lot of times, if it's not a good fit for me, it's not a good fit for them.
Right.
It's mutual. It's not just you're doing it to them, but they also need to be in a position where it's a good spot for them. So I found just being very honest and transparent about what I need and um, brings me where I need to be.
And I had a tough time getting over that because I always looked at it as I must have failed somewhere in the hiring process or the
Right.
partnership process. And admitting that failure is sometimes tough to do.
Oh, it's so hard. And I've felt that way. I had a hard time with a couple interns actually. And again, it's like a learning experience on what I need to be looking for. And we still work together and we still learn from each other and then, move forward.
Yeah. And a lot of the people you work with now are contracted, where you're doing different work with independent contractors. Do you feel like you've lost some of that control versus having employees or people that work for you versus these partnerships? Does it make a difference in accomplishing your goals?
Um, a little bit. I mean, it's a very different dynamic. Um, so for example, my management, they're technically a contractor for me. They manage me, they're international and they're out of Toronto. But before them, I was with a different management company and found that they weren't speaking to who I was. And they were a phenomenal company, but they weren't speaking to who I was. I felt a little out of control because um, they just weren't able to bring to me and to my desk what I was best at. So I did feel a little out of control, but I learned the right questions to ask through that.
That makes sense. And it's it's amazing when, like you said, with the right management company or right partners, right employees, how much more you can do and how much more productive your day becomes.
Mhm.
So I think that's an important thing. And to the contrary, how do you have contracts you sign with these people? Are you, because I guess I would be afraid in your situation or the type of dealing with contracted people, am I their first responsibility or am I their second or their third? Because they're probably contracting with multiple people. So how do you kind of protect your interests, and when you run ideas by someone that they're not going to say, wow, that sounds good for We the Classy, but that'd be great for this other person that I contract with.
I mean, the details, so I do have a contract with everyone I work with, and the details in my management contract, for example, are so specific. And I've learned to read through those details and add whatever I expect from the working relationship. So I've learned that, like you said, they work with other people. So I've learned that if they don't respond, I have something in my contract saying if they don't respond within 24 hours to an email I need them to respond to, and I take that on myself, then they don't have a right to the income that comes from that email. You know, there's very specific details that you have to speak up and stand up for yourself.
And that's something, again, I mean, I hate to say to my class because I try to give them everything they have can get to succeed, but some of that stuff is just, I kind of got screwed once, I'm not going to get screwed
Right.
twice. I mean, so
Right. I found for a while I was like looking at my emails, waiting for someone to come through, and well, that was their job. And
right.
then feeling, yeah, exactly what you're saying. It was definitely from experience.
Yes. You can share as much as possible, but you never know what it is till you kind of hit those bumps in the road. And
Yeah.
it's how you adapt to them, which makes it so much more rewarding. Um, it, when you look otherwise at, oops, lost my notes here for a second. Do you think of any other liabilities that that are out there when you are working in a team? Do you, because you're a heck of a hard worker and you're always active and vocal in what you do. What happens when the people you're working with don't have that same commitment or energy level? I mean, what, that's got to be one of the liabilities, but what other like fallbacks have you encountered?
Um, I'm trying to think of more specific instances so you guys can learn from me being burned. um, but ultimately for me, it comes down to being super transparent about what you expect and need when you're working with your team, and not being afraid to be transparent, because it is a business relationship. You're not there to be best friends. And I found that it can be hard in my industry now, and the way businesses are moving. There's a lot of informal communication that takes place. And you have to create boundaries and make sure that while you can be friends with people, that when you're communicating business, it's purely business. Because that can make things very messy.
And are you someone that believes like when you're dealing with these other businesses that you partner with or do things with, like my wife and I both kind of go back and forth on this. We never discuss business with people like over the phones because there's always room for interpretation or just the person who wants to say, no, they never said that. And it's that whole he said, she said type debacle. So do you make sure when you're working with these other people and these other companies, you're writing things down or sending an email right after a phone call to confirm this
Yeah.
is what we discussed?
I mean, so I can only speak for myself, but I have a feeling other people feel this way. Um, the era of phone call first is almost passe. Like, we're all working in interesting situations. I'm in my house. or I'm running around and we're working, but we're also around personal business too. So it's a lot easier to be sending emails. And if you are going to make a phone call, to make that personal touch to follow up with an email. That's super important. I'm sure you've seen the million memes about people just don't even call me, just
Oh,
text,
yeah.
right? Because a lot of times I can't pick up the phone anyway, but definitely keeping things in writing. I have specific formats of communication with different contractors. My management, where we communicate over WhatsApp and email mostly. And then, and then it just definitely is all more in writing.
Yeah, and that's smart because it gives you the confidence in knowing you've clearly explained what your expectations are, like you were saying with the team, and you can follow up and say, well, I told you on Monday, February 1st, this is what I want, and it's now February 2nd, and I don't have it yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense. And with some of your relationships again with the other companies, and this is going to kind of transfer from the working with teams to etiquette issue, do you worry about the reputation of the people you partner with? Like, I mean, because if you put We the Classy along with some other company, you're endorsing them even if you're not,
Correct.
because they're connected. So how much like work do you do background wise to make sure you're finding good matches?
So for a lot of my partnerships, it's fashion and lifestyle. It's pretty easy for me to dig on a company if they reach out and want to work with me. I can I go to their Instagram page instantly. I see who they've worked with. I like to see diversity. That's like one of the first things I look for. And I look at their old previous partnerships. I look at um, their public communications, and I decide if it seems like a good fit.
And I've shared with some of my previous classes other people that do not as well as what you do, but they do similar things. And their initial look is how many followers, how many people are they following? And it's just the sheer enormity of, oh, I get to be attached to someone who's got twice as many followers, and I'm going to benefit from that. And you can't be that short-sighted.
No, not in this day and age. This is the era of conscious shoppers. This is the era of meaning, where people follow to be connected and not just to see something pretty, because a lot of people can take pretty pictures, a lot of people can create, but this is the era where people are looking for meaning. And if you're just attaching yourself to numbers, that could take you down a dark path.
Can we talk about, I mean, this is a little off topic, but can we talk about the message behind the message of what you focus on a little bit, and why? I, I mean, I think you stand out from a lot of other companies that do similar things, but what is the message you try to put behind your message? What's the meaning in it?
So it's we the classy for a reason. It's not I the classy. And it's because when I was younger, I was bullied like a lot for being different, for being skinny. And so I have grown to realize that our best selves looks completely different for everyone. And we kind of have to put the judgment aside and encourage people to walk in their truths, for us all to benefit from our differences, and for our differences to be our strengths versus our weaknesses. So I really encourage, that is like the meaning for me, to really encourage people to walk in how they're different and their truths. And that way we all will benefit together.
And you share that empowerment throughout all your avenues and on a regular basis. That's something that, like, once you've decided to do that, it's a regular, natural thing for you to do.
Yeah, it definitely it takes practice. It takes facing a little fear or a lot of fear sometimes.
No, I'm sure. And because you are fashion based with a lot of what you do, I've got to kind of ask you this in the sense that so many times you hear it's more important to look good than feel good, or dress for the job you want, not the job you have. How does, or I should say, what does dress do to people in the workplace? What's the focus on presenting yourself in the right manner when you're walking into an office, if we ever get to do that again, Monday through Friday?
Yeah. Well, I'm someone who likes to look at situations and see how I can take control, have power in the situation. And for me, when people say dress for the job that you want, that's externalizing almost. Like, who knows if that's the job you're going to get? Who knows if that's the job you're going to want tomorrow? So rather, I like to say, dress for who I believe I am, right? Show others how to respect you. And I think what you wear really does project a message, and that looks different for everyone. So I'm not saying you got to wear a suit, or I'm not saying you have to look nice every day. I mean, a lot of us are working from home. What makes you feel empowered? Maybe sweatpants today, but dressing up tomorrow and attacking what you need to get done. But there was an article recently published where there's a science behind elevating what you're wearing. It actually does empower you. It does level up your mentality.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting thing, and in the new dynamic of the Zoom world that we're in, it it takes a lot to get up and not just do enough to brush your hair and put on a clean shirt for the camera, but to actually get up, get dressed like you were going to leave for work. And I remember watching, it was either a video on Instagram somewhere, someone was like getting up and driving around the block and pulling in their driveway to go to work for the day, just to do that.
To
They
get
have to
into the mental
do it in their
state.
mind. Yeah. So it, I think the idea of business etiquette and getting in a business frame of mind, even when we're in our dining rooms and our bedrooms or our offices at home, you've got to do that. And clothes are really the image you portray on camera is the way you're doing that nowadays. So what kind of what kind of tips do you have for people to say this is a good way to, if you got to do a job interview or just meet with people, how do you present yourself in the best light, literally, and with a camera? I'm going to do it this way.
Literally?
Or
Oh, yeah.
figuratively.
Like, you want to know
Yeah,
outfits?
I should say I'm jealous. I mean, your videos are always very, you look well, and
Oh, thank you. Well,
I
I mean, right now I'm in the dark because I can't believe these clouds rolled in. But I, first of all, just literally, you're not technically supposed to wear white or black on a camera. Even though those are my favorite things to wear. So I went right between and did gray. But technically, you're not supposed to wear white or black on a camera. It either, is like overwhelming with the white or hard to see with the black. But yes, lighting is very important. Lighting tends to be everything. I feel so dark right now, but they say even get yourself a little ring light for Zoom calls and have the ring light or sit near a window.
okay, but always with the window
Right.
behind the computer, not behind you.
Yeah, don't do what I'm doing right now, which is be in the dark. I had a ring light and I actually turned it on, but then it was reflecting off the mirror and it would just like blind you guys. So
I appreciate that. I left my sunglasses in the car, so.
yeah.
And and when we talk about the looks and the idea of people, you also kind of become the face of your company, the face of your image and your personality. And you had a real interesting situation, and I'm going to kind of give the short version for everybody. you promote different items on a weekly basis for your store, and you try to do them or insist on doing them things that are made in the USA. And there
Right.
was a mishap or a misunderstanding with a product that wasn't made in the USA that you believed was. You went out and you made a real clear explanation of taking responsibility of that. Why'd you do that?
Um, because as I mentioned before, I like taking control where I can. You can't control everything, all the circumstances. I can't control if a business lies to me, but I like to take control where I can. And for me, that shows people that they can trust me and they never have to guess where I'm at. And that way they can be invested in what I do and never question if it's wasted in a way. So I like to show, like, what does it tell people if something goes wrong and you say, well, it was their fault? You just give someone else control by doing that. If you say it was my fault and I can handle it and this is how I'm going to handle it and I'm sorry, people so much more will trust you and stay vested with you.
No, it's a good point, but it sadly, and it stands out to me because it's an anomaly. You don't see a lot of businesses doing that. You
No,
don't
you
see
don't.
many people because it's so easy. I mean, and we're going to kind of dabble into the Robin Hood and GameStop thing
Yeah.
later, but I mean, no one's really in all the different mishaps in that. Nobody's taking responsibility. No one has stood up at all and said, "Hey, this is where we made a bad choice, a wrong choice. Stop this from happening." There's no accountability, and how's that in in the business world? You're a business leader. How do you look at businesses that choose not to do what you do?
I mean, they lose me.
Yeah.
And I essentially think they lose other people are a lot smarter than businesses give them credit for. And if they're gonna be pointing the finger, I didn't do that, or no one feels like they get a straight answer anymore.
Right.
And we all crave that. We're all craving the truth, right?
Yeah.
If we've been craving anything, it's been the truth. So I think that for me, I need to tell the truth and not make people second guess who I am. And I think companies really miss the mark doing that.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on, and I think it's just it's interesting to me because I I practiced law for a while and I've stopped it to better myself and teach, but people rely on the legalese of the world or to say we're not at liberty to discuss this, and it's the simple "I'm sorry"
Mhm.
goes so much further than anyone could imagine. But then there's the fear: am I going to get sued because I said I'm
It all comes down to money, doesn't it?
sorry? And it's a scary thing. But online, and you represent your brand well, and that was a great example. But what other tips do you have to people that are creating? It might be a LinkedIn profile, any sort of social media, and they're trying to get started in the world. What tips on how to do things or things not to do would you have as far as online etiquette?
Um, don't be too wordy. And it's important to know. I don't know if you guys have talked about your elevator speech, or
We're going to.
so I think it's really important not to be too wordy because again, this generation, this age we're in, people consume very fast. So you have to be careful not to lose people with being too wordy. Also, be confident. I think a lot of us experience imposter syndrome. I don't know if everyone's familiar with that, but I definitely did for a while in the finance world where I felt like almost I didn't belong, even though I was registered enough to be a branch manager. It's still tough to feel like you belong sometimes, and don't let that get to you.
And with that though, I mean, at the same breath of not being intimidated, you also have to make sure you're true to who you are. I mean,
Exactly.
some people strive to say, I want to show more, do more, or be more of this type of person because I think that's who my target crowd is. I mean,
Uh-huh.
you send your message out and you determine based on who's responding to it. I know you set out like questions and polls to define better, but you've got to do it based on who you are, not who you're going after, right?
Right. And even with social media, people tend to say what they think everyone wants to hear. But at the end of the day, what you'll do is you'll attract people who aren't really there for who you really are. Then you gotta somehow weed back through this. These people are going to drop off eventually when they realize
Yeah.
that you've just been projecting someone else, not yourself. What a crazy, tedious process rather than just be honest from the get go, attract the right people, create the right relationships and teams and opportunities.
And it might be somewhere different than where you intended to go, but it's going to take you to the right end place.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like online and the world of that, and we kind of talked about phones, that they're not really used for actually calling people anymore. But
Yeah.
you've got this computer in your hand, and how do you escape it for at least an hour a day? And two, how do you use it so when you're talking to your boss or when you're talking to potential clients or potential partners, you're doing it in the right manner when you're using a phone that's 100% with your thumbs, not a keyboard and everything else. I mean, it's a different form than talking through the computer.
Oh, absolutely.
Any tips with that difference? I mean, the obvious emoji question: do you send emojis to people? I mean, or not?
I mean, so for balancing the use of my phone, because I'm on my phone all the time, I call it, I purposely lose it. I just put it in a different room underneath a book and I leave the room and I get busy doing something else on purpose. And I mean, at night after dinner or whatever, unless I have a project I have to work on, I purposely lose it and I just live. We all have to consciously do that. I mean, I have kids and everything, so it's a lot to constantly be on your phone. For communication, I think something that people just need to keep in mind is boundaries. Um, you know, Via phone call, a lot of times asking, do you have a moment before you start firing off is huge. Um, and in a way, you can still do that with text messages
Yeah.
or emails. Hey, can we chat about this real fast? So you can set up a time boundary on whether you're going to work on this right now or no. Let's talk about this tomorrow. I think that's a really important thing. And just emojis, I mean, in the business world, is not the best idea. You're leaving a lot left unsaid, and that's probably not the best idea.
Hmm. And as we get older, it's harder to tell which smile or smirk is on there.
Yeah.
Start zooming into it. And it's interesting you said that about the phone call asking somebody. Like recently, I've been whenever I call someone, if they answer, I'm just assuming they're available because it never gets picked up. So I'm like, wow, they picked up. They're free to talk too, and I just start rambling. But that's good advice to because it kind of went away in the whole COVID thing.
Yeah.
And the other thing, the expectations of return responses on phones. I mean, because everyone knows if you haven't hidden your phone, you got that message the second I sent it.
Yeah.
Why aren't you responding? If it's an email or a text or even a voicemail, why are you listening to it? Why are you reading it? And then you're just saying, yeah, this can wait till tomorrow. How do you manage those expectations?
Um, me personally,
Yeah.
I mean, you have to take this standpoint. Do you want other people micromanaging how you answer your texts, emails, and phone calls? Then don't micromanage how other people respond. Having that respect for how people and when people respond to things, I take that into account. For me personally, I have to be mindful that I am not responding to messages all day. I literally could go from DMs to emails to texts to DMs to emails to texts to WhatsApp, and I could do it the whole day and like look up and realize my day is over. So I have to stop and say, I'm going to answer emails after lunch and not look at them till after lunch. If someone sees that I'm on my phone and they have a problem with it, unfortunately that's their problem. They have to respect that I'm going to answer things when I can.
Yeah. That little green dot doesn't mean it's for you.
No.
And this question is probably going to take you way back a couple of years back to your Schwab days more than current, but meeting etiquette. You're sitting at a conference table, you're sitting in a room, and you're up there presenting to a group of people or sitting at the head of the table presenting. What were some of the most irritating things that you saw happen that people were doing?
Easy, someone looking at their phone. Just nonverbal communication is huge.
Right.
People listening and actively listening is so important. Otherwise, why am I here? Why am I wasting my time?
Yeah, no, those are big things. And how else to get more out of that? I mean, it's just it's such a big thing, and our whole last chapter was nonverbal communication, how to express that. But it's the idea, even on Zoom calls, and if you're Zoom meeting with people, there's so many different tells as to how people are reacting to or not reacting to what's going on. I mean, have you ever like just basically hit pause on presenting to something on some sort of group chat or something, said, hey, you guys don't have time for this, we'll reschedule? Or
fortunately, I have not had that experience. I personally am not on Zoom as much as I am on social media, so luckily I have not had to do that.
Well, I will say you are a lucky soul.
Yeah, it's a tough dynamic.
It gets a little tricky sometimes, but it's, you keep learning, you keep growing a little bit more and more. So I'm going to take a real quick break, see if anybody, because they just get all so quiet and listen intently. Any questions you all have for Venessa at this point, or?
I have one that's not terribly relevant.
I don't think I've been terribly relevant all morning. So
fair enough. Hi, Venessa. I'm Casey.
So.
Hi, Casey.
Hey, I was just curious, since I know your presence is basically on the internet, how often do you have people reaching out to you under the premise of they want to collab, but really they're just trying to score free stuff?
Well, I work mostly on the other end. So it's like just using brands as an example, this is not true stories, but like if like Nordstrom reaches out to me and says, we'd love to work with you. I get the experience a lot where the store is like, will you post for us? And then my time is my money. So I have to be very mindful that yes, I want to create relationships, but also I don't want to work for free. And it happens like a lot daily, not Nordstrom, but like, brands. And I think that's also speaks to how huge the influencer industry is. And it's a very competitive industry. And I think there's a lot of talent out there working for free. So that's an issue too. Because I think it'll be better if influencers can get on the same page together and work to build each other up versus some doing things for free and some not. And anyway, so that I I digress, but
No, yeah, and that just waters down the industry too.
yes, correct.
And that actually brings up an interesting, do you have a responsibility as an influencer? And I mean, I know there's some rules to this and that barely anyone follows them. Disclosure issues, like when you start talking about brands that pay you or do things for you, um, how do you share that you're getting compensated to say something good about Nordstrom's? If we just stay down the line, Nordstrom's, where they're putting you in outfits and you're posting those. What are you?
So what
What
was
are
the
your
question?
rules? Well, what are your rules as far as sharing that you didn't just go shopping at Nordstrom's and picked out 5 good outfits, but Nordstrom's paid you and gave you the outfits? Because some influencers don't disclose that they're paid endorsements.
Well, that's illegal. So the FTC regulates that, and I could be sued if I don't disclose that I'm paid. You're supposed to disclose that you're gifted too, if something's gifted to you. But if I don't put ad or sponsored in a post where, let's call it Nordstrom paid me, that is against the law, and I actually could be sued by the FTC. So there are definite guidelines for that.
And the reason I bring it up is because I think it's one of those things that I see in a good number of radio personalities, because I follow quite a few of them, unfortunately, that skirt this because they feel it's not ever enforced.
Right.
And that it's like, well, I can play dumb till I get caught the first time. And it kind of goes back to that whole ethics issue and doing the right thing and standing by your product. If you know it's wrong, can you really play? I mean, there's
And
people out there that are
you have to
playing
think
dumb.
about like the reason people are trying to skirt it. So they're trying to skirt it, in my assumption, and from where I'm sitting, it's because they don't want people to see them posting ads. They want people to be connected to them more. So what are you doing? You are then basically lying to the consumer. And how does that make them feel?
Yeah.
I don't know. So again, it comes back to how you project is what you're going to attract.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of, I guess, where I was trying
Yeah,
to go with it. But it just seems, it scares me that it's so prevalent, even though there are, I mean, there's rules that say you can't drink and drive. People drink and drive till they get caught. There's rules that say if you get paid to share stuff, you say, I'm sharing this because I'm paid to do it, because it should be a commercial like it is on TV or radio. But
I mean, for me, I just want to be able to sleep at night. I don't want to go to sleep wondering. And no one's gotten caught yet until someone gets caught,
yeah,
I don't want to be the first one. So
no, that makes sense. And then the other part of your answer to Casey that I found kind of interesting, how do you, and I'm not asking in any stretch of imagination what you charge or how that, but I mean, it's hard to put a price to your time because so many different things are tied to the internet now, and service type jobs, consulting jobs are tied to what is my time worth and how am I going to sell my time? And that's kind of tough to figure out how to value yourself, isn't it? Wasn't it when you first got
it
started?
was. It was. And now it's a little bit easier. And like you said, there's a lot tied to it. Like what I produce, how is it being used? Is it just me posting it? Is it the brand printing it and putting it in mailers? I had that happen where a brand later took the photos, put them in all their print mailers and mailed them to tons of people, which then a friend sent me a picture or texted me and said, oh, isn't this you? And that they were not allowed to take my pictures. So you charge more. So it's like, what is the content being used for? But then also my time, what is that worth? Yeah, that's hard to figure out until you know what you're putting into that time.
And it's there's a lot of consumers and even people you probably work with and producing things that kind of question. And I know when I practiced law, it was a big thing and said, you're charging how much per hour? And it's kind of like, well, yeah. And they, without getting a piece of something to hold in their hands, they don't get the tangible idea of it. And defending what you're going to do with that is sometimes tough, but you've got to
Yeah.
do it. Yeah. So um, we're going to transfer this class now to Finances 101. We're leaving the business world, or at least this part of the business world, moving to finance. We're going to make Vanessa put on a brand new hat.
I'll do my best.
I like I said to you in the back and forth, it's better than I can do. So we've all watched the last week the phenomenon of GameStop, which is now down 25% today.
I haven't checked. What a
Yeah,
surprise.
I just popped it up so I could be as current as possible. Why did it go crazy, and why is it now coming back to earth?
Why? Well, okay, so where do you want me to start with this? Because the whole phenomenon with GameStop is different because of how people on Reddit decided to run up the stock and make it go up.
And that was based, if I understand correctly, the knowledge that so many of these hedge funds were counting on GameStop basically
Yeah.
falling apart, and they were shorting the stock, which is a technical term. Feel free to Google it because I can't give a good
So
1 minute definition on it, but it's basically you're betting on a stock losing money, and if it does, you make a lot of money. So
right. So the easy description of shorting is, for me, is thinking of it like the opposite of just buying a stock and selling it when it goes up. That's the ultimate goal, is to buy a stock cheap and then watch it go up and then sell it, right? Well, shorting is the opposite. It's when you sell the stock when it's really high, but you don't have it. And that's what's hard to wrap our minds around, is you're selling something you don't have. So you're selling stock, and then you're hoping it goes down so you can buy it cheap and fill the order. You're going to buy it cheaper and fill the order. So they were hoping, which it made perfect sense, to short GameStop for the hedge fund. And this is where it gets a little crazy, is that this GameStop went up like crazy, and people think, oh, this is, the system's being played, right? But companies, essentially, their stock prices are based on the company value. They're based on the revenue, and they're based on how much the company spends. It's based on, logically, how is this company going to be doing? And GameStop is kind of like a passé thing. I mean, people download video games. They don't go to GameStop anymore. So it made sense that GameStop was doing worse and worse and worse.
it's kind of like record stores or Blockbuster.
Right. I mean,
no sense in having them except that little
it's good on the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, what happened worked against all the laws of what made sense for companies to do well in the stock market. And then there's an added drama of Robinhood, which I can explain, but
what was Robinhood's biggest mistake that they made in all of this, do you think?
okay, so from what I understand, and I have not read super deeply into it, but Robinhood is basically like a trading platform that is Robinhood, like for the little guy.
Yeah.
And so the people who decided to run up GameStop used Robinhood as their platform. But Robinhood, when this all went down, and it was obvious that this hedge fund was losing all their money, Robinhood limited trading. And so what does that say? Are they controlling the market in a backwards motion now? But what I found out is Citadel is the market maker for Robinhood. And now Robinhood's a platform, but they need someone to move the stock around. And that's what the market maker does. And Citadel is the big guy, and they influenced Robinhood to slow trading. So all the manipulation
happened.
Yeah.
It was the whole tie into Reddit, and like the likelihood of those who bought early and sold it sometime next week, they made their college education, or they made lots of money. But the likelihood of something that's happening again, would you kind of say highly likely, likely, very unlikely?
The likeliness of this to happen while investing in the market, it's an unlikely situation.
Yeah, I mean,
like I said, it's not natural to logic. So the stock market works based on actually how companies are valued. That's why if like Target closes a bunch of stores, the stock doesn't actually go down, while logically we're thinking, oh, they're closing stores, that's not good. No, but now they have more money. The company has more money because they're not operating stores. So sometimes their stock's going to go up. It is logical. But when you have people on social media platforms driving up prices, now there's like a backwards logic to the whole thing. I wouldn't ride on that happening for you.
Yeah.
But it's like it's like a reality TV for the finance world right now.
That's a good way to look at it. I didn't think of that. I mean, I look at it now. You're basically at a casino table in my mind. The smart people sold, walked away, and took their money out of it. The internally optimistic or desperate people were waiting for the next jump, the higher price, and they're going to end up losing a lot of money because they didn't know when to walk away.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's gambling.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really what they were doing. Like you're saying, investing isn't how much am I going to make today or tomorrow. It's a process, and I think while Robinhood's good in what they offer, and essentially is good to get people to be able to buy and sell stocks, you can't look and say, I took 10,000 and made $15,000 this week, because you're going to go up and down, and it's got to be a process.
It goes up and down. If you're invested correctly over a long period of time, it goes up. And something we always told people when I worked in wealth management was, you need to think, do I need the money tomorrow? Because if you don't, then you leave it. And that's the goal, is to invest not in like one-off stocks, because it works like gambling. When you do invest in one-off stocks, it overall can end up working against you unless you are a super professional investor.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It happened all last week, and I'm just like I said, I was thinking over the weekend, you could probably break it down a lot better with all the licenses you've held and the knowledge. Just the sheer randomness of this. And I think if it was any company other than a gaming company, I don't think that people on Reddit may have noticed it. I think because it was who it was and the company it was, and then it expanded a little bit to AMC and some other things, movie chains, which are, a dying breed right now because of COVID, but it just seemed so unique and so odd.
I think, yeah, I agree. I think it made it approachable too. Like the whole subject of this, if it wasn't GameStop, if it was some company no one's heard of that is complicated, I don't think anyone would have grabbed onto it. But this is so much more approachable.
Yeah, like if a pharmaceutical was being shorted,
Yeah,
it would have caught on. People would have had the faith to do this. But everyone knows GameStop, or at least it's driven by one.
right.
So, All right. Are there any last like words of wisdom when it kind of comes to like all the things we've kind of covered, bounced around? Anything like that we should all take away from Vanessa and say, hey, that was one heck of a that we haven't talked about? Anything that I missed that you think?
I mean,
Well,
no, I took a couple quick notes in my phone and I'm like, let me see if we, no, I mean, we really covered it all.
Okay. I definitely appreciate you taking a little bit of time. Are there any other questions for Vanessa before I let her sneak out of here? Okay, silence in the squares. I feel like it's Hollywood Squares sometimes. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and giving everybody a little bit of time, your time today. And I know there was a lot of information that you shared from all the different topics we went over that will be helpful down the road. So thank you. And I will, I'm sure I'll see you on my phone at some point soon.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Jalen. Thanks, guys.
You guys, you have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Thank you.